Hello, I'm Wayne Kirkpatrick, and wearing this for the COVID, of course, and we're socially distanced from the camera, so we're in good shape here, plus we're outdoors. So, I am a volunteer with the Dan River Basin Association, and I do a lot of water monitoring for them based on dipping up macroinvertebrates out of the stream. And macroinvertebrates are little creatures that live in all our freshwater streams. We're here beside the Smith River, and all these creatures are right there in that river. And there are 19 different types of macroinvertebrates that live in all our freshwater streams. And everything we're going to show you can be found on a website called Virginia Save Our Streams, VASOS.org. Lay these out here so you can kind of see some pictures of them as we go along. We refer to this as a tub of bugs. Not all, but most of these macroinvertebrates, they all have individual names, but most of them some of them live their entire life in the stream. Most are the larval or nymph stage of a flying insect, but they begin their life as an aquatic insect living in the water. And they like to cling to rocks and sticks and things that are on the bottom of the stream. And if you go to a stream, and if you take a rock and roll it up real slow, you may find that you'll see macroinvertebrates. Right here we have a snail, and this little guy, see how camouflaged he is? That's a stonefly. And it certainly does not look like a fly now, but when it grows up to be an adult, it will be a fly. And we have quite a few of those in the tub here. We call this a tub of bugs. You'll notice I have an aerator here. These are oxygen-loving creatures, and I'm going to turn that off just so you can see the water a little bit better. When they're in the stream and they live on the bottom, they love the riffle areas of the stream where the water is tumbling over the rocks, and that incorporates a lot of oxygen into the water, and that's what these creatures like, is high levels of oxygen in the water. So this particular one is called a true fly. That will turn into an actual living flying insect that will probably buzz around your head sometime during the summer and be aggravating, but right now it's an aquatic insect, aquatic larva. So here we have a gilled snail, and you can see the opening where the snail actually crawls out. That's called the operculum, and then the helix of his shell is upward. And for you, those of you looking from the camera, the opening is more to the right side of the snail. And if it's a right side, then it's always a gilled snail, no exceptions. If this snail had the reverse of this, the helix twisted the other way, and this operculum was on the left side, you would have a lung snail. And here we've got a picture of both. Here's the gilled snail that I'm holding. Let go of it. See how that's very similar? And the operculum is on the right side of the snail, and here the lung snail is on the left. Think L, left lunged, and you'll know you've got a lung snail every time. And if you have a flat coil, that's also a lung snail. Gilled snails always have the spiral helix and the opening on the right side. These are somewhat, they're intolerant of impairment. You can see these words here, intolerant of impairment. That means they do not tolerate pollution in the stream. The gilled snails, the lung snails, I'm sorry, on the other hand, are tolerant of impairment. So you may find these in clean water streams, but you're a whole lot more likely to find them if you have a lot of pollution, and you'll probably find a whole lot less of the gilled snails if you have much pollution. Now, the types of pollution that affect these creatures are three main kinds: sediment, which is mud or dirt, toxins, which are poisons, or nutrients, such as fertilizer, nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, plant nutrients. If an excess amount of those nutrients are in the water, then it's very likely that they will occupy some of the oxygen, use up some of the oxygen in the water, lessening the amount of dissolved oxygen. That will reduce the incidence of these bugs being in the water, and you'll find not only less of them, but you'll find mostly the ones that are tolerant of pollution. So that means things like which ones are tolerant? Black flies are very tolerant of pollution. Midges, the lung snails, those are just a few. The leeches are definitely tolerant of impairment. And then we have the other side of the coin. If you have clean water, you have things such as stoneflies and mayflies that are intolerant, very intolerant of impairment. So if you're finding these bugs, and particularly caddisflies, in a stream, then you've got a stream that does not have a great deal of incidence of it or measure of pollution in it from the standpoint of toxins, sediments, and nutrients. So we mentioned stonefly. I had one in my hand a while ago. Let's find, see what else we can find here in the tub. Here we go. See how camouflaged this guy is? And we've got a snail hiding there. So here is what's known as a helgramite. And a helgramite has a very nasty set of pincers on its head. You know, it can bite you a little bit, but it also has, if you can see, the white tufts all the way down its abdomen at every juncture of an appendage. Those are his gills. That's how he gets his oxygen out of the water. But this guy is very small. He'll be living in the water for several years, and he'll end up being at least as big and as long as my finger. And then when he has his terrestrial stage of his life, it will become a Dobson fly, a huge winged insect compared to the little larva that we have here. It's quite a difference. Really interesting bugs. Everybody's probably familiar with the dragonfly as an adult. It has wings and can fly around very rapidly up and down the side of a stream or a pond. But it begins as a larval stage and looks very different from the adult. Excuse me. Go with one more here, then we'll talk about other things. This one looks like a little spaceship. That's called a water penny. And I guess the penny name circular, kind of copper colored, but this is the larval stage of a beetle. And underneath he has all his gills and his leg parts. See him wiggling there. Another one of our macroinvertebrates that we have here in the tub is the crayfish. And they're always the favorite because they're really spooky looking up close. They have 2 great big claws and 6 true legs. And their mouth parts here, that had to be the inspiration for a lot of science fiction movies. Their gills are under their abdomen, and if you can tell, I'm moving a little filament around, if you can see it moving at all. This one's really small. He has little long filaments there that is what he pulls his oxygen out of the water with. They also have, because they're a macroinvertebrate, they have no skeletal structure inside their body. You and I have bones. We've got really soft skin, but we've got bones that help us stay upright and protect us from falls and everything. The crayfish, being an exoskeleton, does not have any internal bone structure, no skeleton. He has what's known as an exoskeleton, which is a really hard exterior covering. I don't know if you could hear that or not, but you can tap on the plastic here and get a loud sound. You can do the same to this exoskeleton on this crayfish. It's very hard, and that's how it protects him from other things. And you can see him, he tends to go backwards. If he's ever being threatened in the water by a fish or some other bigger crayfish or anything, he can go backwards in the water with his claws behind him out front. As he goes backwards, they're in the front, and that protects him from whatever's trying to catch him and eat him. And he also has a great big flipper that he can grab a lot of water and flip it and really shoot backwards really quick. I don't know if we can get him to do it in the water here or not. Let's see here. Okay, he's not going backwards, but he is. Let's try that one. See how he flips backwards really quick. So that's how they get away from any kind of predator that would eat them. Bugs today, you may want to know how I caught them, and I used this, what's known as a kick seine net. It has a little bit of a weighted cord here to keep the net on the bottom and keeping it from floating up, and then two sticks that I simply hold on to. And in the background here you can see the water flowing by, so you can get into the stream. And I do not have boots, so we're not going to do it right now, but when I caught the tub of bugs that I showed you, then here's the net. We put it in the stream. The macroinvertebrates are living on the bottom of the stream. Their actual full name is benthic macroinvertebrate, which means bottom dwelling. So they live on the bottom of the stream, and they're clinging to, holding on to the rocks, the grass, the leaves, the sticks, anything that's on the bottom of the stream that provides a substrate for them to attach to. They're very weak swimmers, so if they let go of what they're holding to, the stream will wash them away pretty easily. And that's how we catch them. We go in and we disturb the bottom of the stream just by moving the rocks around. And that upsets the macroinvertebrates, makes them let go, and then the water washes the bugs into the net. Once I have them in the net, I simply pick it up and I bring it to wherever my container is that I'm going to put them into, and I pick out the ones that I want to catch. That's how easy it is. Program, Dan River Basin Association has a program called Trout in the Classroom, and doing that program, the kids will have a 55-gallon aquarium in their classroom. Some schools put it in the hallway, some schools put it in the cafeteria so that everybody can see it. But sometime in the first semester of school, they'll receive about 250 trout eggs that are about ready to hatch out, called eye-up eggs. And once those eggs start to hatch out, then the kids release them out into the aquarium, and they're little teeny tiny swimming fish. And as they grow and become fingerlings, then while they're in the classroom, they're fed a little powder, stinky powder, called, it smells like fish, but it's a fish food powder that you would use at a home aquarium. But once they're up to fingerling size and the kids release them into a stream like the Smith River, the fish are on their own. There's no one there to feed them anymore. Well, macroinvertebrates is one of the main forage foods of trout. And all these different bugs here, the trout will eat them. And that's the reason for the claws and other things, and also the reason why they're so hard to see on a rock. They're camouflaging themselves so that they can be safe from the trout. The trout still find them and eat them, and the trout grow. Another interesting thing about our freshwater streams, we're here during the fall of the year, and you may have seen in the background leaves falling. Well, there's a lot of leaves and sticks that land in the river, but you hardly ever see them. Why is that? part of the reason is not just because they wash away, they still get hung up on the rocks. These creatures, some of them are called shredders and chewers. They actually live on the downed leaves and sticks are actually food for some of these macroinvertebrates. So they're chewing that up, those nutrients and organic matter up, and using that as a food source. That's one reason you don't see, our rivers are not clogged with leaves. As part of the food web, and I'm sure you've had that in school, each layer of the food web with, I guess, humans at the top and the microscopic things at the bottom, as each animal above eats what's below or each other as predators, then as you go up the food web, these macroinvertebrates are important, and keeping pollution out of the stream is important so that the food web doesn't have a gap in it, where things above in the food web, if they're looking down at something to predate on, it's not there. Well, they have no food source, so that's going to hurt their populations. These creatures, these macroinvertebrates, they will not only eat organic matter, they eat each other too. They're very predatory. The crayfish will catch small minnows and some of the other smaller macroinvertebrates, and then All right, we talked about pollution that works on the stream that affects these macroinvertebrates, and those three types of pollution are toxic, sediment, and nutrient. The sediments, of course, are mud or dirt, and just flowing into the stream, making it muddy. That reduces the amount of oxygen available to these bugs. Same thing with toxins and nutrients. The toxins are simply poisons, and the nutrients causes a lot of algae growth or plant growth in the stream that absorbs the oxygen from the water. If you take oxygen out of the water for whatever reason, away from the bugs, then that reduces their numbers, so it becomes a form of pollution. That's not the only types of pollution that affects a stream. Another one, there are several, but another one that we'll talk about is temperature pollution. If you can see the stream here around us, it has a lot of shade and a lot of trees along the stream bank, but there's an area here without any vegetation whatsoever, just a little bit of short grass. Well, with that, if you've got long stretches of that along the stream, then the sunshine can just penetrate right to the water and warm it up. And if you warm up the water, well, we talked about these bugs being food for trout. A trout will perish in water that gets above 70 or 72 degrees Fahrenheit. So if the fish are dying, then some of these bugs are going to die also. So temperature is another form of pollution that can work on the streams, even though I mean, we all need sunshine, but too much of it is not necessarily a good thing for some things. Now, in sampling for these bugs, we showed how to do it, catch them in the net, and we will capture these bugs, however many we find, and there is a mathematical formula where you take and count how many of each type of bug you have, and there's a matrix that you fit those numbers into, and it results in an ecological score for the stream. And that ecological score will tell you yes or no, there is pollution affecting the stream. A number at or near 12 means that the water is as clean as it can get from the standpoint of not very much sediments, nutrients, or toxins in the water. As you go down in numbers and get towards zero would mean you didn't find any bugs. So there's nothing in the water. There's obviously something affecting the water that is killing the life in it. So when we do macroinvertebrate sampling, then that's a form of biological sampling. And that simply means we're using the living organisms in the stream as indicators of the health of the water. So that's if we will do our part to not pollute the stream, if we'll keep sediments and toxins and nutrients out of the stream, then the water will be clean and healthy. The macroinvertebrates will be there in large numbers and a variety. They'll grow. And when the trout come along from the Trout in Classroom program or from any other source, then the trout will eat the macroinvertebrates, have plenty of food to eat. they'll grow, we can go fishing, we can eat, as humans we can eat. So by doing our part early in the cycle, by not putting anything pollution-wise into the stream or on the ground near the stream, then that little bit of work pays off by us having food for us down the road.